Right, moving on to our next session. It's a panel discussion, and the topic is current state of metaverse opportunities and challenges. Now, this is going to be interesting because, in my opinion, one of the biggest challenges at the moment is really educating people about how metaverse works. So I would like to invite the panelists on stage. We have Wilson Tay Kah from CTO Consortium 21. Ravi Gupta, founder of Safexpaya. Ahmed Tahir, CTO of Mham Intl for IT and Edukko. And our moderator, Samuel Pang, director of Fortris. I got it right this time. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, thank you very much for getting my name right this time. Thank you very much, everyone, for staying around. I believe that this will be a very interesting panel discussion because I have here with me, and I'm quite intimidated by these three very, very experienced gentlemen with deep industry expertise. So I will not hog the limelight, but I shall let all these three gentlemen introduce themselves briefly. Maybe Wilson would like to start first.
Sound test. All right, cool. Hey, thanks, Samuel, for moderating this discussion. So basically, this is Wilson. I represent Consortium 21. Consortium 21 is basically a technology company that helps brands to go from Web 2.0 to Web 3.0. So we work together with brands. We sit down together with the brands to come up with a very creative solution for them to have additional use cases that haven't been possible before using Web 2.0. So one of the very interesting use case that we have done with brands is, for example, e-commerce. As we all know, e-commerce is very, if you want to buy something, you go to e-commerce. But there is not much of interaction between users and merchants when it comes to e-commerce. Let's say if I want to ask for product recommendation, it's not possible for me to ask via e-commerce due to the response time, the lead time on chat box itself. So one of the things that we have done with e-commerce brands is to have this metaverse virtual experience being represented for the e-commerce itself. So if you want to buy something, you go to e-commerce. But if you're unsure of what to buy, let's say I have a budget of 500 USD, I'm looking for recommendation for a gaming phone. So what I will do is, instead of going to the e-commerce, I will go to the metaverse to say, just go into the store and say, hey, I have this budget constraint. Can you please introduce me a gaming phone, right? And what's different compared to what we have in e-commerce? I can now have a real-time interaction with the merchants, and this haven't been possible before in Web 2.0. And we're happy to have be one of the first to introduce this kind of interaction in Malaysia, right? Over to you.
That's amazing, Wilson. I think you just hijacked quite a few of my questions I wanted to ask.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. This is Ravi. I'm the founder of Safexpaya. So we are basically a fintech company, right, which powers platform and the API infrastructures for the businesses across the globe. What we have done for the case of Metaverse very recently, we have basically solved 5 use cases for a case of Metaverse for the UAE and the GCC market. So this includes like the use case of basically the real estate, right? The use cases of your education, entertainments, then you talk about groceries, then you talk about typically like a shopping experience. So what unique thing which we have done in the overall Metaverse ecosystem is, right, so whenever we see like Metaverse, what is Metaverse? People basically linked it with blockchain and the cryptocurrencies, right? So what we have done unique here is like we have integrated typically like your online e-commerce checkout experience as a part of Metaverse, which no one has done in the world. So that's a unique thing which we have created as a part of Metaverse. Rest, of course, we'll take the further questions and then we can discuss around. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. This is Ahmed here. And to be honest, I saw some discussions earlier and I was blown away. This is one of the best, definitely, events that I have attended, to be honest, in terms of the type of people who are putting out there what they're thinking at the time, right? Or what they're working with, definitely with the latest trend in technology. I work with the company called Mham Intl. What we do exactly is content creation. That means that we create content within VR. We've been in the market for more than 6-7 years. We already have an app before we had Web3, the boom that everyone used to talk about. or is talking about, right? So we used to create engaging content on virtual reality aspect. We also, based on these guys, apparently we networked earlier, and we can definitely, have shared synergies later on. But earlier we did create a project that's called luxury design. It's been implemented with different vendors related to interior designing as well as architectural firms. So what we do is that we create an entire house for you based on your requirement, based on the size, and what that does is like, this is for architectural design, and they can have an intuitive, a very immersive experience before they understand how the construction is actually going to look like when it's completed. The second thing is that we created an application where you would be able to design your entire house. That means starting from furniture, what kind of furniture you have. We have 3D photography that we would convert to VR assets in Unreal Engine 5. And what we do is that basically you would be able to see that under different lighting situations, under different use cases, how it would look. You design your entire house and you have a way of creating a purchase order within the VR environment itself, which connects to a POS system. Because prior to Web3, I guess, people did not trust having to pay on VR or putting out their information on VR, and there were not a lot of SDKs in order to do payments through them. So I think this is something that we can definitely dive into, because this is what we want to do the transition to. So where we actually give people the sense of responsibility when it comes to ownership of assets and definitely ownership of money in general, right? Okay.
Thank you. Right. I just forgot to introduce myself as well, and after hearing all three of you, I'm under pressure. Right. Well, basically, I'm based actually out of Singapore. I work with a Spanish firm that provides digital asset treasury management solutions. And in my previous life, I spent 20 years in mostly front office commercial roles, helping institutions to grow the businesses within APAC. And that has spanned across capital markets, financial markets, derivatives, and in the last 4 years only, crypto baby here, into blockchain and crypto. All right, so right off the bat, let's dive into this conversation. Before we talk about the current state of Metaverse, perhaps help us all to understand what exactly is Metaverse. Is Metaverse, say, the internet? Or, I believe all of us here, we play games now. Perhaps just a show of hands, who has not played games before? Nobody. So all of us have played games, right? So when I think of Metaverse in the past, I think, is that internet, or maybe Mario Bros. That's how old I am. Or is that Roblox or Minecraft? So I'd love to hear from the panelists here, what exactly is a Metaverse? Perhaps, anyone?
So in my opinion, Metaverse is basically a platform where we can transition our real life tasks, and we can be present in two realms at the same time, right? So that means that there's a possibility that you are present, let's say, it's not a possibility, it's actually a reality. You'll be present in reality, and you will also be present within the metaverse doing what you would normally do in real life, right? So for example, interacting with clients. From business owner aspect, I would say that this is very relevant in the service industry, because right now, especially after COVID, a lot of things have changed and transitioned to a more online platform. And with that, we provide engagement. For example, I do work with a company called Edukko, and what we do is that we provide educational services. So what I see myself as a metaverse is basically with virtual classrooms, right? So we have these kind of projects in works where students all around the globe can interact and sit with their silly hats in front of the teachers, and they can get to ask questions like they would in a normal classroom. They would be doing labs, they would be doing different activities, right? So as a business owner, it's very important that metaverse, to me, is something where you can project yourself and your real personality with taking ownership of who you are. Because in reality, if I say that this is Samuel, basically what it means is that he is Samuel, right? So that means that there's no other Samuel that I'm pointing at. So this is what happens when it comes to Web 3.0 or Web 3. We're going to get to that. But that means that you're taking responsibility of who you claim to be.
Amazing. Right. Ravi, would like to take it?
Yeah, so from... Hi. Yeah, so if you talk about my opinion, like what is metaverse, so...
Before that, Ravi, I like to add, Ravi was very humble when he introduced himself. In fact, Ravi has more than 10 years of experience in payments.
Yes.
And also currently helping companies to develop cashless cross-payment as well. So
yeah, so maybe like I can add few more lines, right? Because I just talk about the metaverse. So we are of course a fintech company which gives the ready-made platforms in terms of neo-banking. You talk about metaverse, you talk about payouts, you talk about facial recognition kind of a payment which we are launching in this geography. Right, so all these technologies we white label it and we give it to banks, fintech companies, governments across the globe. So that's the thing. So coming on to the metaverse, right? So metaverse for me basically means right, it's more of a virtual environment, right? Where the people can just create their own avatars. They can go interact it, right? They can feel the product, right? They can create their own weight. They can create their own sizes and all those things. They can try the product. They can buy the product and they can have the delivery after making the payments into your house, right? So nowadays the shopping experience have been changed. Like earlier we used to generally go to the offline stores and shop around it. Now after that, then online world came, right? Where we used to just go to the e-commerce site and then buy the product, right? Using the checkout experience. Now in the metaverse environment, which is like a very new term, which just started few years back, right? Now you can just create your own avatar. You can go try the product and make the payment. The product will be delivered at your house. So that's the meaning of metaverse for me. Yeah, thank you.
It's awesome. Wilson, anything to add?
Yeah, I think my definition of metaverse is very much similar to what the rest of the speakers and also Samuel has mentioned. It's essentially very similar to something that we are very, very familiar with the game, right? Because metaverse is actually the same as what we have in game. The only difference between metaverse and game is when you go into the game, everything you do is related to virtual currency, virtual economy, and it has almost no correspondent to what you have in real life. Whereas for metaverse is, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of how the things are being represented in a metaverse, like what Ravi and also Ahmed has mentioned, I echo to what they have mentioned very much. You can go into the game to create avatar. You can also go in and linger around with your friend. In metaverse, you can also do the same, except that when you go into the metaverse, the building that you see, it could be a building that represents a brand. And when you click on the building, you could be performing a real life activity, performing a food ordering, and probably you can also be talking to friends, real life networking, like what we're having, like what we're doing here in the panel session, right? So essentially what we are, in terms of the definition of metaverse, I would say it's very, very similar to what we used to have decades ago. It's very much similar to a simple 3D online game. Yep.
Amazing, right? So would I be right to summarize what all three of you just shared is that in the ideal world, the metaverse would be a synthetic virtual environment that mimics or is parallel to the real world, whereby a person in real life can make use of his or her avatar to go not just explore the virtual environment, the metaverse, but also to create what he or she imagines and experience that as well. Would that be correct? I would say that would be the ideal metaverse in that sense. So before we come to the current state of metaverse, I was just thinking back to the games I used to play, and also some movies I watched before in the past. Maybe some of you already thought about that. Before where we are today, the Web 3.0, has any other past projects that comes to your mind that has tried to be a sort of metaverse in any way? If any one of you have any thoughts, just go ahead.
Well, I can think of multiple projects. Let's say for the past 20 years, there have been projects like Project Calypso, there have been like Second Life, IMBU. They follow a similar type of a pattern when it comes to having a digital economy because that's what we get with Metaverse. They have a healthy digital economy. They can purchase assets, they can create assets, and they can sell those assets. They can have services, and they can sell those services. There is gambling. There are a lot of things that you can do. And it was introduced back in 2003. So we're talking about 20 years from now. And right now, we are in a stage where we have all of that, and that's decentralized, right? So coming from that aspect, I mean, if you guys played GTA, I guess everyone or someone at least did at some point in their time, right? So you get an idea, right? So basically, it's like, of course, this is more of like reality on adrenaline, but definitely that's not going to be the case in with the metaverse or the platforms that I'm talking about. So they have been there. The economy has been robust, and the economy has been booming. They have their own way of managing the currency values. They have their own way of doing forex, right? So this has been in place for a while. You're talking 20 years. That's a big time, right? And they have transitioned over time. The way that the reason that they got left behind is apparently ownership. So this is where Web3 actually helps us in that domain. So that means that we have now actual ownership of things that can transition to real world value. How do you create a value for that's available online? You actually equate it to how much it's worth if I'm going to take it out and if I'm going to sell it to someone. Why Pokemon cards, for example, why they're worth so much? I mean, I remember Logan Paul recently purchased the most expensive Pokemon card in the world. I guess it was 11 million or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
He
Okay.
paid that much money for a Pokemon card, but it's a game. Why is a game valuable? Because it has a value associated with reality. So that's what with metaverse, that's what we see now.
It's funny, it's amazing. When you mentioned, I caught you saying Second Life. It brought
Yeah.
me memories. I'm not sure how many of you here are, because looking at the audience here, all of you look so young to me. I'm turning 51 in 3 months' time. So when you mentioned about Second Life, I was among the pioneers back at Saxo Bank to have a Saxo Bank virtual presence in Second Life 20 years ago. Almost 20 years ago, to be exact, 16 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, they used to have open discussions. I mean, like universities, they used to have open days on Second Life. Big celebrities like, for example, Snoop Dogg, for example, Drake, they used to come and play at concerts, and basically they used to pay the in-app currency, which equates to real-world money. So this is like some of an ecosystem. We're talking about an ecosystem now. And I mean, with Edukko, with our company, basically what we are planning is to do something similar. We want to have education in a way which is immersive. That means that when you think of education, don't think of textbook, don't think of reading material. Think of seeing material, think of experiencing material, out-of-body experiences that you cannot relate to in let's say in a traditional classroom, right?
Amazing. Any thoughts from Ravi or Wilson? Feel free to.
I think Ahmad has basically summarized everything pretty much well. But just one thing to add, I think pretty much a lot of 3D MMORPG game, World of Warcraft, The Sims, they share the same commodity as Second Life and IMVU, right? So because those games, they have, you're able to trade assets inside. There's a digital economy inside. You can chat with your friends, network within the game. And yeah, I mean, they're pretty much the same as what Ahmad has mentioned. So yeah, Ravi, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so I think like if you talk about the past things, like if you talk about like, let's talk about the education system, right? Where people generally wants to interact with the teacher, right? And the fees payments and all those things used to happen more on a offline kind of environment, right? Typically, if you talk about you have, right, you are making your fees, and generally if you talk about the earlier days, we used to do most of the payment like while visiting to the schools, right? And the teaching standards used to be like the teacher used to come to your home, right? Then later on, the world evolved now that students are going to the different schools, that most of the classes are happening online and all those things. Now, if you're talking about like a Web3 kind of an environment, it would be typically more in terms of a virtual kind of a thing where you can interact, right? You can interact, you can solve your queries, you can have all your question answers, all the kind of a live kind of an interaction can happen as a part of Web3. If you talk about now the changes which are going to happen. Yeah.
Well, that is looks like we will definitely have quite a bit of things to discuss about. Yeah. Now, maybe I'd like to just ask the audience here right now, since we're talking about metaverse, how many of us, just raise your hand, believe that the word metaverse or the metaverse actually came about just in the last 5 years? Nobody? All right, we have a few here. How many of you think that metaverse, or maybe the concept of metaverse, existed before 5 years? Wow, there are even more people, right? Perhaps I would just like to ask, sorry, can you raise your hand again? I just want to pick the lucky one. This lady here, right? Perhaps you mentioned you raised your hand because you believe that the concept of metaverse is before 5 years, right? So where do you hear that from? I mean, where do you get that? Do you see it or read it somewhere? Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Yeah. And one interesting snippet I'd like to share, before I actually came on this panel, I did some homework myself as well and realized that the term metaverse appeared, the actual term metaverse appeared back in 1992 in this novel by Neil Stephenson called Snow Crash. And bear in mind, in 1992, that was in the absolute infancy stage or even before the time of internet. 10 years before Google, 10 years before Yahoo, and 10 years before Facebook, Neil Stephenson mentioned the word metaverse in his novel. And he also mentioned that people in the real life can traverse between the metaverse world and the real world using mobile phones, virtual reality. That was back in 1992, before internet. No concept of mobile phones, and he was mentioning that. So that was really, that boggles me. It just helps me to think that everything that we have in the world today starts with imagination, right? And that's going to be so amazing, right? And all right, so we talked about that, the history of metaverse. And we mentioned, I think one of you briefly also touched on Web3, Web 3.0. In the last few months, I've heard a few people mention these terms, Web 3 and Web 3.0, in similar vein. Is there any difference between these two? Or are they just the same, Web 3 and Web 3.0? Right, maybe Wilson, yeah?
I think there is a huge difference between Web 3 and Web 3.0. And the thing that I see, there's a lot of people has actually mistaken Web 3 as being a Web 3.0. I remember seeing Wikipedia, a screenshot that Wikipedia is actually thinking, there's this phrase that says Web 3, also known as Web 3.0 in Wikipedia, but that's not the case because Web 3.0 is very similar to, it refers to the version of World Wide Web, right? So we have Web 1.0 that says that, everything that we see on Web 1.0 is related to just read-only, right? There is, it's very hard for users to be able to interact with the website at the point of time. Then we go into Web 2.0. That's when we see Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. Now users are presented with the option to be able to edit content, upload content into the websites. And users are also presented with a more vivid, more higher level of interactivity with the content itself. Whereas for Web 3.0 is like a new version compared to what we have at the current state, Web 2.0. So Web 3.0, we talk about the data not only that it should be readable by human itself, it should also be readable by machines. So potentially we will see, articles or images. It will be incorporated with the metadata, which is something that describes the resources that we have in the internet, so that it can be easily be processed by machines, right? So for example, say article. In Web 2.0, we have articles just like that. But in Web 3.0, I suspect there's going to be metadata that describe the article. So we might have, the name of the article in RSS, in this JSON format, and the content of this article, and also the stuff within the article itself will be represented using metadata. And for Web 3, is a totally different thing compared to what we have in Web 3.0. Web 3 is more towards the mindset about governance and also decentralization, right? So it talks about how do we intermediary from existing business processes so that stuff can be processed in a more seamless and a much cost-efficient way. And we also talk about how do we come up with decentralization of business entity. So as you all know, when a centralized government has too much of control or something, then we talk about monopoly, we talk about data privacy issues and stuff like that. So Web3 is more coined towards solving that kind of issues.
Right. Anyone else?
Right. So, based on what Wilson touched, I guess I'd follow up on that. I believe that if we look at, let's say, certifications, right? So you have certifications like TOGAF, you have certifications like PMP, you have bodies for certification, right? But it doesn't matter that even if you have a TOGAF certified enterprise architect, it doesn't mean that you would implement everything that's written there. So I would kind of, using that as an example, I would say that Web3 is like a governing framework on which Web 3.0 operates. So 3.0, basically it means that how we connect with Web 2.0 and Web 1.0, keeping those standards in mind. So as a governing body that provides a set of rules, set of guidelines for us to follow relevant to the privacy statement, right? So first, that there was an age of internet. Second, there was an age of data. Now this is an age of privacy. So this transformation, you remove one part of this transformation. You cannot remove the part of web, you cannot remove the part of data, and now you cannot remove the part of privacy. So Web 3.0 kind of synergizes with what we have been doing already. That means that if we look at Web 2.0, it just didn't, came out of nowhere. I mean, definitely they were transitioned. They were, they slowly they started consuming data rather than having static pages, right? So, but it doesn't mean that static pages ended. Even today, we're using Web 1. That means that we're using pages which are static, which only has information to consume, which does not take any input from our side. So it's not that technology is redundant. It just means that technology adapted. The technology is better. It's kind of created for consumers to protect consumers.
Right. So I would say that Web 3.0 is a progression from Web 1.0, Web 2.0, the internet as we know what it is today. And Web 3 is, in a nutshell, what we call the creator's economy, whereby you own your own data, you own the governance, and you are able to decide who uses that, when it shall be used, and if, let's suppose, I'm the one using your data, you have the right to ask me to compensate you so that you can monetize the data.
Yeah, like copywriting. I mean, this is the part where we do asset ownership, and asset ownership in this day and age is one of the most important aspects.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Awesome. Right. That's going to be a long way to go, and I'd love to have my data being monetized. Ravi, anything to add? If you love to.
I think that's a fairly good definition which both of them have given. Right. So I'm agreeing with that. Yeah.
All right. Wonderful. Right. So let's get back to the current state of Metaverse. When I think of Metaverse right now, currently, two names come to mind: Sandbox, Decentraland, right? But again, it doesn't give me a good ideal impression of what metaverse should be because those two are silos. They don't talk to one another, right? So let's suppose if this side of the hall is in Decentraland, that side is on Sandbox, you can't talk to one another because whatever you create is on one side. You can't see what's on the other side. So in this sense, I want to jump right into the challenges. What do you think are the current challenges of the current state of metaverse right now? Ravi.
Hello. Yeah, so I think there are, because if you talk about metaverse, it's pretty new term, right? So of course the challenges would be there because the first important challenge is more of our laws and jurisdictions, right? If you talk about all the countries knows like what is metaverse and they're trying to adopt that metaverse ecosystem, but still they're not clear about what kind of laws needs to be built up, right? What kind of information needs to be exchanged between either, if you talk about the same country, there are different businesses, what kind of information needs to be exchanged, right? How you can govern the data, right? How you can create a community-driven kind of a ecosystem kind of a thing, right? That is the first issue which is there. Second issue is more in terms of challenges, if you talk about, is the privacy issue, because it's like a typically like, if you talk about internet now, you go and browse anything, right? Where you leak your information, like more in terms of which pages you have searched, right? Which pages you have visited and all. If you talk about current metaverse ecosystem, right? You are basically getting into a virtual world where you're trying the things with the help of Oculus, right? You are basically exposing yourself more in terms of your mind and basically what you're doing, what in terms of action, sensing the things, right? So all those things are also coming as a part of a risk. So you are basically exposing yourself into a virtual world, which can be, if any kind of a security in terms of technology is leaked, right? You are totally exposed in the world. Right, right. So there are more challenges, more in terms of like your health level issues, because you are trying electrical equipment, right, over yourself, and then you are trying to see the world, right, more on a virtual reality. So that can impact your health. So these are three major challenges which I can see about the metaverse. Yeah.
Right, right. And on this note, do you think that the world we are in today is at a stage whereby a lot of people are comfortable with the metaverse, or do they even know what the metaverse is? And if it is, what should we within the industry do to help expedite the adoption of metaverse? And if it is not, again, what should we do to help to bring up the awareness of the general masses, the institutions, the individuals with regards to the metaverse? Yeah, maybe Ahmed, because you talked about education earlier.
So I guess with integration, there are a lot of different ways. Right now, if it's only talking about virtual reality, I recently came across a product. Actually, it's not really like metaverse related, but it's more of augmented reality product. But it solves a specific problem, and the problem that it solves is very specific. It's called Nreal Air. Maybe who have heard of it? Anyone knows about this product? So basically, what this product does is that it overlays it information on top of your real world, right? Like how augmented reality works. But the good part about it is that you can actually switch between AR and VR by blocking the light. So that means that you would be completely immersed. You'd be sitting in a room, totally immersed. At the same time, when you're, let's say, going to the airport, I want to see what is my itinerary, right? I want to see what time my flight flies off. So I would be seeing that real-time information update. So I guess the way that metaverse can actually integrate into lives of people is basically through the requirement, the need, because we have to first create the need for metaverse. Right now, the need for metaverse can be, fulfilled by, let's say, Web 2.0. Right now, they can be fulfilled by different means or even a personnel that you hire for yourself, right? That for your company or to manage a product or whatever. So right now, I think the basic thing is that, let's say that we never knew that we needed mobile phones, right? We used to have an age of pagers where you get like a text message, or used to get like informed that you need to call this number. There was an age for that, right? At that time, and I remember my father used to tell me that, he never knew he needed mobile phones, to be honest. I mean, for him, it was convenient that he received a message, he went to the phone booth, he called the person. So for him, that was convenience. Right now, Our convenience is our mobile, everything we have on our mobile phones. It has replaced almost all the gadgets that we have. Well, definitely it has replaced Spotify for me, to be honest. I'd never use Spotify anywhere else, so I use it on my phone. For alarm clocks, I don't need them.
Not even
Reminders,
iPods.
I don't need them.
In the past, there was iPods. No more iPods.
Sorry?
iPods.
iPods, yeah, I mean, I still love that.
See, you
I
took
mean,
a few
be
seconds
honest,
to remember what's iPod, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was an exceptional product. To be honest, the feel of having an iPod, it's completely different. It's like having a book and having an ebook, right? So I guess that's the best way of describing it. So I guess right now, if you want to push a metaverse to the mainstream, first of all, we have to think about how do we create the need for metaverse, right? We have to attack use cases. For example, in terms of education, we attack it by creating open classrooms, by giving access to people for open days with university that they can never actually fly off to. They need a visa to go to those universities. But in metaverse, apparently there's going to be a teacher, or there's going to be a professor, there's going to be a counselor. He can sit down with you, have one-on-one conversation with you, heart to heart, and he can tell you, you might make the cut, you might not. But this is what we need. We need to create that sense that you require this. I mean, no one knew that, when Apple released the first iPhone, no one cared about it. Why? Because it was touchscreen. And at that time, everyone was like, you know what? No one cared about touchscreen. We are BlackBerry, right? We have a QWERTY keypad. Now look where BlackBerry is right now. So the difference is that you have to first understand the need. You have to understand the requirement. And based on that requirement, you have to create a use case in metaverse. And that's what we need to do in order to have mass adoption. The second thing I would say is definitely the cost. That means that for a normal headset, you still end up paying a premium price, generally premium price, but apparently not that much. But there are headsets that cost way above like 20,000, 25,000. I think they're called Varus, or I forgot the exact name.
That's beyond my league.
Yeah,
so no.
Yeah, and those guys, they actually created something that literally blew my mind away. I recently saw that they created impulses. That means that you wear something, and you would be amazed that you won't be able to, let's say, differentiate that if this is a real table or a virtual table. That means that when there is a touch impulse, they have those already implemented in development, of course, right now. But they have this. They have like virtual bots, right? And you touch them and you feel the impulse, the difference in the material. If I touch my fabric, how do I know this is real? Is when I know that, okay, this material feels different.
Right. So essentially, you're saying that one of the challenges is that the world as it is today doesn't yet see the need for the metaverse. So there must be a need to be created. All right. So hold on to that. And Wilson, what do you think are the challenges that in your experience in what you do every day?
Yeah, I think to echo to what Ahmed has mentioned, he basically said that technology is something that hinders metaverse from going to mainstream adoption. One thing to add on is I also want to say that user experience is also very important when it comes to increasing the awareness for metaverse. Because right now, the key entry point into metaverse, if you talk about metaverse that sits on Web3, right, is to be able to log in using your MetaMask wallet. And as you all know, the process of getting normal, ordinary Web2 users to create the first ever MetaMask wallet is going to be very, very tedious. I'm a tech guy myself, and the first time when I create my MetaMask wallet and also to purchase my first ever cryptocurrency, even for tech-savvy individuals, it took me a few hours just to understand how the mechanics behind it, right? So in order for metaverse to gain mainstream adoption, I think the entire process has to be very seamless, as though as how we are logging into the game in the Web2 space, right? It has to be as the same process, just like just connect your. Probably we can just abstract the tedious part out. So from user point of view, just come in, just click create wallet. The mechanics behind can be done, can be automatically done. right? And next second you are within the metaverse already. So I would say a very easy way to understand this. This concept to illustrate this problem is if ordinary 60 years old, 70 years old grandma is able to log in into metaverse without any technical knowledge, then I think we are one step closer to gaining mainstream adoption. But if we are not there yet, then probably it takes longer before we can reach that state.
So the benchmark, remember, is our grandparents. Once our grandparents are in the metaverse, we know we are there. And once they have an avatar in any metaverse, we are there. Ravi, anything to add on that?
I
The
think
challenges?
Challenges. So we have already discussed, like, of course, the privacy concern. Like, if you talk about, like, there are lots of gaming stuff which is happening, like of your Roblox and all, right? The kids are more getting opted towards that kind of a metaverse world, right? Where they want to go and play the games, which is very dangerous if you talk about, right? So that's what one thing which I can talk about. Yeah.
Right.
And there are, like, if you talk about, there is another challenge is metaverse is more in terms of making the payments, right? So there are almost 10,000 plus currencies which are available. The people are confused which currencies to be used for buying the stuff as a part of metaverse, right? So these are a broad level challenges which we have just covered. Yeah.
Totally agree. Yeah, absolutely agree. Some of the, I was talking to American MNC and we started discussing about having digital asset to help them mitigate the cross-border payment. Imagine you are an MNC, you have to repatriate. Let's suppose you are, say, American company, right? You want to repatriate all your revenues in US dollars and you are based in Singapore, Australia, UAE, everywhere. You pay Forex costs, you pay the SWIFT transaction cost, which is not cheap. I used to work with SWIFT. I know it's not cheap at all. So there's all this, but using digital asset mitigates all that, right? So, and which is great. And that brings me to the next point, right? So with the current state of metaverse, how do you think, or maybe you can give any examples of any businesses that you know or you are helping that are currently using the metaverse as it is today to help them in their businesses?
So maybe, like, I can talk about some of the examples which we have did the POC in UAE market, and that has been liked by most of the government institution. And we were also, our solution also got presented as a part of GITEX, which happened like few months back in UAE, right? So we have tried to solve 4 to 5 use cases. If you talk about, right, the use cases includes your real estates, right? Nowadays, if you want to buy any kind of a property, right, so you get a brochure kind of a thing on your WhatsApp or maybe on your email, right? The second way could be like you have to visit to the property, then you can experience the things, right? So what we have done is, right, we have created an ecosystem, right, with the help of the metaverse, we can basically create the overall exact size of the house, right, which you want to buy with the configuration and everything. And you can experience that particular thing more in terms of your entry. You can create your own avatar with your own look and feel. You can go into that property itself, see the configurations, right? And if you want to buy that property also, you can do the payment also online, right? So that is the kind of experience we have created. And after doing the payment, right, you can get the confirmation stating that your booking has been done successfully, more in terms of registration, right? And rest of the payment plans can be presented as a part of brochure in the form of blockchain, right? That's what we have tried to cover. Then we have also tried to solve some of the use cases like of your grocery, which is more of a day-to-day things, right? Nowadays, how we do the shopping, either we go to the retail stores and buy the stuff, right? Or second could be that I can, we order it via some of the supermarket grocery apps which are available, right? Third could be like you can yourself go into the virtual world, pick up the stuff, see the configurations, and all these configurations are lying on a blockchain, right? And you can basically add all these stuffs as a part of your shopping cart, right? And then you can make the payment using like, so one thing innovation which we have done is like nowadays, if we talk about, people talk about metaverse with these use cases and they want to make the payment through crypto. What we have done here is like you can make the payment using your fiat also. That is the unique thing we have done as a part of overall experimentation, as a part of POC for the metaverse, right? So there are more use cases, of course. That's time is the limit right now. So
that's amazing. I think the real experiences here, examples here is very important to how we shall progress from where we are at the current state of metaverse to how it should ideally be. I think of Tron, the movie. Has anyone here not watched Tron? Everybody has watched it because no one raised their hand.
Except the panelists.
So, you know, when I think of the ideal utopian state of metaverse, I think of the movie Tron, right? Whereby the real person jumps into the virtual world and then he becomes he looks like a real person. He can eat, he feels hungry, he can fight, he feels the emotions, right? Just that is also not the ideal version of the metaverse because it's supposed to be decentralized. In Tron, it was controlled by one avatar.
Yeah, and I guess I'll kind of circle back on the challenges as well. Well, speaking of Tron, right? So it was amazing, to be honest, and the people at that time, they were blown away about it, right? So you would be able to see that, you know, there's a real person as well as there's an image of that person, right? And performing, interacting with assets, using them. So I guess we can come back to challenges in a way as well. So that means that, let's say within Metaverse, we can still use assets. We can own assets. We can purchase assets, right? Like says, we can purchase a Lamborghini in Metaverse. I won't be able to afford it over here, but definitely in Metaverse, I can purchase one, right? I can have the rights to it. Maybe it will look a little bit different. Maybe the spelling would be different, but that's fine. No one's going to pay too much attention to it.
Right.
But either way, my point is that owning asset and asset, let's say, business in terms of assets, that means buying, selling assets, right? Leasing assets, this is fine. But when it comes to services, let's talk about services, right? Law firms, right? Content creation services within the metaverse. Workers that the Meta is trying to do is that basically have workers work through metaverse, have the calls and everything within metaverse, right? So have that presence available, right? So this is a service that they're providing. But at the end of the day, metaverse has to interact with reality. That means you cannot really disconnect as you can disconnect in terms of assets. So for example, if you have an asset in metaverse, you can simply, you know, sell that asset or put that asset up for auction. The person pays that money and he gets that asset. There is no intervention of reality in that form. But in case of services, I guess this is one more platform where we need to rethink how we want to offer services. For example, insurance, right? I came across a use case where farmers using decentralized insurance. How it works is that basically they create a smart contract, and the smart contract gets paid out the moment that you know, it gets the information that there was heavy rainfall or you know, the crop died or whatever the situation. The smart contract automatically makes a payment. So this is where things are different. But at the same time, things like risk scoring in insurance, right? Things like predictability, things like fraud detection. These are still factors that metaverse has to come up with a solution which separates metaverse from reality in a way that it gets managed on that platform itself.
Right. So we are still quite some way from the ideal version of metaverse, but we're definitely getting there, and we will get there with the progression of technology. And as long as everybody in this room believes in that and continue to work in that, despite all the naysaying from the mainstream media. Right. Now, due to lack of time, perhaps I'd just like to ask one more thing, and we can go around. Right. What will be your wish list if you have your way in terms of what you'd like to see in the metaverse today? Person.
I was here in the morning, and I remember one of the things that the other speaker was mentioning, something related to metaverse as well. So he said, right now, there's already an invention that it's a VR glasses, by the way, but it's a very small scale VR glasses, very similar to the size of my glasses at the moment. And the fancy thing is it has, you know, a lot of processing power and high-tech technology incorporated within the glasses itself. And I think the key to gaining adoption, like what Ahmad has mentioned, is really the technology behind the stuff that empowers metaverse. So in order for metaverse to gain mainstream adoption, I think this is very, very important. Right now, the way how we go into metaverse, you know, you look at Meta, you need to own Oculus. It's not to say that it's not great, just that it's too bulky for any average person to get access into the metaverse. in order for Metaverse to have mainstream adoption, I think it has to be very seamless and has to be very user-friendly. You know, it can be just, today I want to attend to a Metaverse panelist discussion in London. I could have just wear a very lightweight glasses and boom, next moment I'm in the panelist discussion.
Got it.
Right. So,
right.
yeah.
So your wish list is to have a advanced technology that is just as small, just at the fingertips.
I recall, I think something comes to my mind when you speak about that, you know, like teleportation, right? So I think recently they had a concert where they did a hologram for Michael Jackson. So apparently it was like a full life form hologram of Michael Jackson. It was mimicking his movements and everything. But of course, this is like kind of not completely related to Metaverse, but this is more related to immersive experience as compared to Metaverse itself. So I guess this is where you see, like, you see your idols, right? People who have passed away. You still see their work, and you
As
are.
I'd like to hold that on. I'd like to ask Ravi, you know, what's your wish list? And
So
then
I
before we
think,
go back on to you.
So I think Wilson said the very right thing, like glasses, right? So there is one company where I have invested also, because if you talk about Oculus kind of a glasses, right, that's very heavy, right? And those are like these kinds of devices become heated up very, very fast, right? So there is one of the company where I have invested, and these glasses, the VR glasses, is gonna be, the size is gonna reduce to very small, right? And where you can do, and it's a very lightweight, and I've tried that product, right? So that company is gonna launch their product sometime next quarter, right? That could be one of the important wish list which I can see. That is the first part. Second is, of course, there's some kind of a law needs to be formulated, right? And of course, just like Emma said, right, there needs to be arise, right? So once the need is arise, then everything will follow up. That's from my side.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and maybe 10 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, I'll try to summarize as much as possible. All right. So basically, with the current state, I would say that it needs more realism. This is something that's lacking in, considering that we're in the age where we are launching, let's say, 24 gigabyte VRAM, let's say graphics card. We recently came up with 4080, 4090, recently got released from NVIDIA. And we have currently achieved a pinnacle in terms of development, because I do come from, my company does development, and we create content on Unreal. So basically what's the difference is that currently the entire graphics part where we are talking about immersiveness, because what graphic is basically how you perceive things and how real it feels to you. I think this is where we need to have a drastic improvement, because if you do not feel that this is realistic, or the facial impression, it feels very plasticky to you, you would not be able to see or feel that how is it any different. I would rather have a Zoom call with that person.
Got it. Thank you for that, Ahmed. So immersive technology at the fingertips, and again, seamless experience. Thank you so much to our panelists. I would love to take any questions, but unfortunately, we enjoy ourselves so much.
I think about one.
Okay.
We can take about one, maybe two questions from the audience.
Right. If there's any questions, please go ahead and make trouble for our panelists here.
Okay, so my question is about the graphics part that you were talking about, because right now Metaverse have very like Metaverse like look like Sandbox, Decentraland, they all look very cartoonish, right? But going into the realism and speaking about Unreal Engine 5, so how do you see that achieving, like that part getting achieved? Because considering that it's web-based right now, and so which technologies do you feel that have to come into play to achieve the realism, visual fidelity part?
I guess I will come back to my point that since it's more of a web-based solution at the moment, so mostly things are designed in Unity or lower-end engines that does support the platform. But let's say that if you want to take it out, right, have something that is corely relevant towards realism. For example, if you see any new games, the AAA titles that are getting released, even open world, right? So what is metaverse? It's open world. Apparently you can do anything in it, right? So there are new titles for games that are released, which looks phenomenal, right? Of course, there are a lot of bugs, there are a lot of issues, there are a lot of updates, patches that needs to be done. And that's the same case with metaverse, apparently, right? So what we need to do is that we need to come up with a solution for a platform which would be able to support and work with higher end engines like CryoEngine, right? And like Unreal Engine, like for example, Frostbite, or things like this, which you know, gamers or which people generally see realism in, because we are already at that stage in technology. We just need to have that adaptation within Meta. I hope that answers your question.
Do you have time for any more? No?
No, I think we're done.
Great. Thank you so much to,
Thank you.
Yep, to Wilson, to Ravi, and to Ahmed here. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. And if you have any questions, please don't be shy to go directly to them. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
You've
you.
been wonderful. Thank you.
Quite a discussion that was. Thank you to our panelists.